Hidden Empire. Alexander Mills, the prodigal son returns, my sister Olivia's voice cut through the quiet of the converted warehouse space. Still hiding among your precious paintings, I see. Don't you get tired of being the family disappointment? I looked up from the canvas I was examining, carefully setting down my magnifying glass before turning to face her. Olivia stood in the doorway of my restoration studio, her power suit and perfectly styled hair a stark contrast to my paint-stained jeans and wrinkled button-up. "Hello, Olivia," I said calmly. "What brings you to this side of Brooklyn? I thought you considered crossing the bridge a personal failure." She strode into my workspace, her stilettos clicking against the concrete floor as she glanced around with barely concealed disdain. "Mom sent me. The Houston Gala is tonight, and she wants to make sure you won't embarrass us, though I suppose it's too late for that." A struggling artist in the family? Dad's still trying to explain that one to his investors. My name is Alexander Mills, though my family prefers the artistic one or, as Olivia so eloquently put it, the family disappointment. At 36, I own a small art restoration studio in Brooklyn, a profession that makes my old money Manhattan family cringe. What they didn't know, what I'd carefully hidden for years, was that my life among canvases and paint solvents was only half the story. "I'll be there," I assured her, standing to my full height. Even in her heels, I still had a few inches on her. "And I'll dress appropriately." "See that you do," she replied, adjusting her diamond watch. "It's an important night. I'm announcing some major news." "Oh?" I raised an eyebrow. Her grin widened. "Acquired my third tech startup this year. Mills Ventures is now officially a unicorn. Dad's going to be so proud." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. If Olivia noticed the slight tightening of my jaw, she didn't mention it. "That's wonderful," I said. "Congratulations." "Thanks." She didn't even try to make it sound sincere. "You know, there's still time for you to join the real world, Alex. I could use someone with your eye for detail to manage our art investments. At least then you'd be doing something useful with all this knowledge." The way she said knowledge made it sound like a communicable disease. I smiled, thinking of the encrypted laptop in my office safe, of the meetings I'd been taking under a different name, of the shell companies and offshore accounts. "I'm happy where I am," I told her. She shrugged, already turning away. "Your loss. Remember, 7 o'clock sharp at the Pierre. And Alex," she paused at the door, "try not to talk about brush techniques this time." After she left, I waited exactly 5 minutes before heading to my office. The space was modest but efficient, with walls of art books and a desk that had seen better days. To most, it looked exactly like what they'd expect from a struggling artist's office. They never noticed the state-of-the-art security system or the fact that my vintage desktop computer was a custom-built machine more powerful than most corporate servers. Locking the door, I opened my laptop and connected to a secure server. 3 windows popped up immediately, video calls waiting from Seoul, London, and San Francisco. "Good morning, Mr. Mills," my assistant's voice came through clearly. "The Miyazaki acquisition is ready for final review." "Thank you, Eliza," I said, scanning the documents on my screen. "Has legal finished their assessment?" "Yes, sir. The acquisition terms are solid. We can move forward whenever you're ready." I glanced at my watch. 5 hours until my parents' charity gala. Plenty of time. "Schedule the signing for tomorrow morning," I instructed. "And Eliza, make sure everything's in place for the announcement." "Already done. The press release is ready to go, though," she hesitated. "Are you sure about the timing?" I thought of Olivia's smug face, of years of condescension and dismissal. Yes, I'm sure. Tomorrow morning will be perfect. After ending the call, I sat back in my chair, looking at the empire I'd built in secret. Atlas Contemporary Investments, no relation to my sister's Mills Ventures despite the family connection, was now one of the largest private art investment firms in the world. We operated entirely in the shadows, using shell companies and discrete investments to hide our true size. For 10 years, I'd built this company while maintaining my cover as a simple art restorer. The job wasn't just a front. I genuinely loved art, loved preserving beauty and helping museums and collectors access it, but it also provided the perfect cover for my other life. Who would suspect the quiet art restorer of being one of the most powerful people in the global art market? My phone buzzed, a text from Mom, "Don't forget to shave, dear. The Vanderwalls will be there tonight." The Vanderwalls. One of many old money families my parents were always trying to impress. I texted back a simple okay and began packing up for the day. I had a barber appointment already scheduled, along with a fitting for the tuxedo I'd had made specifically for tonight. Just because I didn't flaunt my wealth didn't mean I couldn't play the part when needed. The high-end barber shop was empty when I arrived, perks of owning the building and having a standing private appointment. Carlos, my longtime barber and one of the few people who knew my secret, was waiting. "The usual?" he asked, gesturing to a chair. "Something a bit more formal today," I said. "Family event." He nodded knowingly. "Ah, the famous Mills Foundation Gala. Your sister was in earlier, talking about it to anyone who would listen." I'm sure she was. As Carlos worked, I checked my emails on a secure phone. The Miyazaki acquisition was proceeding smoothly. By this time tomorrow, Atlas Contemporary would own one of the largest private art collections in Asia, the same collection my sister had been trying to access for her fund's investors for months. "Your sister mentioned she's buying some big art portfolio," Carlos said, as if reading my thoughts. Couldn't stop bragging about it. I smiled. "She's trying to buy it. There's a difference." He caught my eye in the mirror. "You didn't. Let's just say tomorrow's papers will be interesting." 3 hours later, I stood in front of my mirror at home, examining my transformation. The simple art restorer was gone, replaced by someone who could hold his own at any high society event. The tuxedo, a Tom Ford I'd had custom tailored, was elegant without being flashy. My cufflinks were minimal but expensive, the kind of pieces old money favored. Most importantly, I looked exactly like what my family expected, their artistic son making an effort to fit in. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from Eliza. "Everything's set for tomorrow. Are you sure you don't want to tell them tonight?" "No," I replied. "Let them have their gala. Tomorrow will be soon enough." The Pierre Hotel was lit up like a Christmas tree when I arrived. Town cars lined up along Fifth Avenue. I recognized most of them, Bentleys and Mercedes belonging to the same families that had been part of our social circle for generations. A valet appeared as I pulled up in my modest Volvo, another carefully chosen prop. The car was nice enough to avoid embarrassing my parents, but not so nice as to raise questions about an art restorer's salary. Mr. Mills, Henderson, our family's longtime social secretary, greeted me at the door. "Your parents are in the main ballroom." I could hear the gala before I saw it, the murmur of sophisticated conversation, the clink of expensive crystal, the subtle notes of a string quartet. This was my parents' world, the one I'd chosen to step away from. At least publicly. "Alexander." My mother's voice carried across the hall. "Darling, you look presentable." Coming from her, it was high praise. Catherine Mills had never quite forgiven me for choosing art over finance, but at least I'd made an effort with my appearance tonight. "Happy gala night, Mom," I said, kissing her cheek. "You look beautiful." She did. At 65, she was still the epitome of grace and style. Her friends often joked that she'd made a deal with the devil to maintain her youthful appearance. "Your father's by the bar," she said, already scanning the room for more important guests. "Do say hello before you hide in the corner sketching the waitstaff." I made my way through the crowd, accepting air kisses and polite inquiries about my little studio in Brooklyn. Most of these people had known me since childhood, had watched me grow up alongside their own children. None of them understood my choices. "There's my boy." Dad's voice boomed as I approached. He was holding court with his usual crowd, golf buddies and business associates who'd been part of his life for decades. "Come here, let them see you." I submitted to his enthusiastic hug, noting the slight slur in his words. He'd started the celebrations early, as usual. "Still playing with those paints?" George Vanderwall asked, his tone making it clear what he thought of such an occupation. "Still playing with those paints," I confirmed. "Someone has to preserve the old masters for the next generation." They laughed, the indulgent chuckle of people humoring what they saw as a harmless eccentricity. "Speaking of the next generation," Dad said proudly, "where's your sister? She's got some big news to share." As if on cue, Olivia appeared, champagne in hand. She'd changed into an even more expensive dress, her diamond necklace catching the light as she gestured. "Everyone," she called out, her voice carrying across the hall. "I'd like to make an announcement." The room quieted, all eyes turning to her. Olivia lived for moments like this, had always thrived on being the center of attention. "As some of you know, Mills Ventures has been growing rapidly this year," she began, playing to her audience. "Today, I'm proud to announce that we're on the verge of our biggest acquisition yet. By this time next week, we'll own the Miyazaki Collection, one of the most valuable private art portfolios in the world." The room erupted in applause. Dad beamed with pride. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I sipped my champagne and waited. "Of course," Olivia continued, "the deal isn't quite final yet, but my sources tell me it's just a matter of time. The papers are ready to sign." "That's wonderful, honey," Dad exclaimed. "Always knew you had it in you. A real businesswoman, just like your old man." Olivia basked in the praise, accepting congratulations from all sides. Finally, her gaze fell on me. "What do you think, little brother?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. "Ready to admit you backed the wrong horse?" I met her eyes calmly. "I think," I said carefully, "that you shouldn't count your chickens before they're hatched." She laughed, and others joined in. "Always so cautious, Alex. That's why you'll never be more than what you are, hiding in your studio while the rest of us build empires." "Perhaps," I agreed mildly. "But at least I understand the value of due diligence." Her eyes narrowed slightly. Olivia had never liked it when I used big words, seeing it as a challenge to her intelligence. "Due diligence," she scoffed. "I've got the best lawyers in the business. Everything's taken care of." I just smiled and raised my glass. "Then I guess we'll see tomorrow, won't we?" She frowned, catching something in my tone, but before she could press further, Mom was calling everyone to dinner. The ballroom was a masterpiece of old-world elegance, gleaming tables, priceless china, crystal that had been in the family for generations. I took my assigned seat, noting with amusement that I'd been placed at the far end of the table, well away from any important guests. As the first course was served, Olivia held court from her position near Dad, regaling everyone with tales of her business prowess. I kept quiet, responding politely when addressed but otherwise focusing on my food. "I just don't understand," Mrs. Vanderwall said from beside me, her voice low. "You were always so bright at Harvard. You could have done anything. Why waste your life with art?" I considered how to answer. In 12 hours, everything would change. But for now, I had a role to play. "Art is never a waste," I said simply. "It teaches us that things aren't always what they seem." She shook her head, clearly disappointed by my response. "Well, at least your sister is upholding the family name. Though it must be hard, watching her succeed while you, well. It's not as hard as you might think." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of subtle insults and backhanded compliments. I'd grown used to it over the years, had learned to let it roll off me like water. As dessert was being served, Olivia stood again, calling for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," she announced, raising her glass. "To Mom and Dad, who taught me everything I know about business, who showed me what success looks like." She paused, her eyes finding me. "And to my brother, who proves that not everyone is cut out for the family business." The room chuckled politely. I raised my glass with the others, thinking of the documents waiting to be signed, of the press release scheduled for morning. "Enjoying the party?" Olivia asked later, cornering me by the dessert table. "It's lovely," I replied. "Mom and Dad must be so proud." "They are." She straightened her necklace smugly. "It would have been nice if both their children had amounted to something." I selected a chocolate truffle, examining it carefully. "You know, Olivia, success isn't always about making the most noise." She snorted. "Oh? Tell that to my bank account. How much does an art restorer make these days, anyway? Enough to buy that tux?" I glanced down at my Tom Ford, another carefully chosen piece of my costume. "I'm good with money." "Right." She finished her champagne in one gulp. "Well, this has been fun, but I should mingle. Big day tomorrow, after all. That Miyazaki deal isn't going to close itself." As she walked away, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Eliza, "Everything ready for morning?" Her response was immediate, "All set. Press release goes out at 9 a.m. sharp. Want me to send you the final numbers?" "No need," I replied. "I'll see them in the papers with everyone else." The gala began winding down around midnight. I said my goodbyes, accepting one last round of condescending comments about my career choices. "You really should consider Olivia's offer," Mom said as I kissed her cheek. "An art director for her fund would be so much more appropriate." "I'll think about it," I promised, knowing I would do no such thing. As I drove home to my modest Brooklyn apartment, my real penthouse was across town, another carefully maintained secret. I thought about how different tomorrow would be. For 10 years, I'd maintained my cover, building my empire in secret while my family dismissed me as the disappointing son who'd chosen art over business. Tomorrow, they'd learn just how wrong they'd been. The next morning, I arrived at my studio precisely at 8, just as I had every day for the past 10 years. My work boots echoed through the warehouse space as I made my way to my office, nodding at the early morning staff who never questioned why the owner kept such strict hours. Eliza was waiting for me, her tablet in hand. In the studio, she played the role of my assistant perfectly. Outside these walls, she was the COO of Atlas Contemporary and one of the sharpest business minds I'd ever met. "Everything's ready," she said quietly as we entered my office. "The lawyers are gathering in Tokyo. Press release goes out in 45 minutes. I set my bag down and powered up my secure laptop. "Any word from Olivia's team?" "They're still expecting to close the Miyazaki deal this morning." Your sister's lawyers are setting up in their offices right now. I smiled, imagining Olivia's face when she realized what was about to happen. Let's give them a few more minutes of hope. At precisely 8:55, my private line rang. Mr. Mills, Mr. Miyazaki's translator said. Everyone is in position. Excellent. Let's proceed. The next few minutes were a blur of signatures and confirmations. By 9 a.m., Atlas Contemporary officially owned the Miyazaki collection, along with its subsidiaries, Art Authentication Technologies, and Cutting Edge Restoration Division. Press release going out now, Eliza announced. I pulled up several news sites on my screen, watching as the story broke across multiple platforms simultaneously. Breaking, mystery buyer acquires Miyazaki collection. Global art investment giant Atlas Contemporary reveals identity of founder. Wall Street stunned as art restorer named as art market mogul. My phone started buzzing immediately. The first call, predictably, was from Olivia. What the hell is this? She demanded without preamble. Some sick joke? Good morning to you too, sister, I replied calmly. I take it you've seen the news. This is impossible, she sputtered. Atlas Contemporary? You're not the founder and CEO. Actually, I am. Have been for 10 years now, though I understand your confusion. After all, I'm just an art restorer, right? There was a long silence, broken only by what sounded like papers being frantically shuffled. But I had a deal. The paperwork was ready. Was it? I asked innocently. You might want to check the fine print. The Miyazaki collection has been in play for months. We've just been waiting for the right moment to finalize things. We? Her voice cracked. Who's we? My team. My company. My empire. I paused, letting each word sink in. You know, the one I built while you were busy mocking my career choices. The line went dead. I looked at Eliza, who was trying to hide her grin. How long until my parents call? She checked her watch. I give it 3. 2. Right on cue, my mother's number flashed on my screen. Alexander James Mills. Her voice was shrill enough to crack glass. What have you done? Good morning, Mom. I'm a bit busy at the moment. Perhaps we could discuss this over dinner? 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 Do you have any idea what's happening? Your father's phone is ringing off the hook. The Vanderwalls are calling. The club is calling. Everyone wants to know how our artist son secretly built a multi-billion-dollar company. I could hear Dad in the background, apparently trying to field calls of his own. Tell him to get over here right now, he shouted. I have meetings all day, I said, which was true. The acquisition of the Miyazaki collection was just the beginning. But I'd be happy to host everyone for dinner at my place tonight. Say, 7 o'clock? Your place? Mom's voice dripped with suspicion. You mean that little loft in Brooklyn? No, I mean my penthouse on Park Avenue. I'll text you the address. There was a long pause. Park Avenue? But that's... See you at 7, Mom. After ending the call, I took a moment to breathe. 10 years of secrets were finally coming to light. 10 years of careful planning, of maintaining my cover while building something extraordinary. Ready for phase 2? Eliza asked. I nodded. Send out the second press release. This one was even bigger than the first. Atlas Contemporary announces merger with European art technology firms, deal valued at $3 billion. The merger had been in the works for months, but we timed it perfectly to follow the Miyazaki acquisition. By the time my family arrived for dinner, the business world would be reeling from two of the biggest deals of the decade, both orchestrated by the quiet art restorer they'd dismissed for so long. The rest of the day passed in a carefully choreographed dance of meetings, interviews, and strategic planning. I gave exactly one interview to the New York Times, explaining how my background in art restoration had actually been perfect preparation for building a global empire. Beauty is truth, truth beauty, I told the reporter. And who better to understand the value of truth than someone who spends their days uncovering the original vision beneath layers of grime and varnish. At 6:30, I left the studio and headed to my real office, the top floor of the Park Avenue building that had been my home for the past 5 years. The penthouse occupied the entire floor, though I'd maintained a small loft in Brooklyn for appearance's sake. My private elevator opened directly into the foyer, where my actual home office put Olivia's corporate headquarters to shame. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Central Park, while state-of-the-art technology allowed me to manage my empire from anywhere in the space. Eliza had arranged for dinner to be catered by the city's most exclusive restaurant, another establishment quietly owned by Atlas Contemporary. The dining room table was set with a kind of understated elegance that only old money could truly appreciate. At precisely 7 o'clock, the elevator announced my family's arrival. Olivia entered first, her earlier swagger replaced by barely contained fury. Mom and Dad followed, both looking shell-shocked. Even Henderson, who had insisted on accompanying them, seemed unsure how to process the transformation of the family's poor relation into one of the city's wealthiest residents. "Welcome to my home," I said, gesturing to the spectacular view. "Drink?" "How long?" Olivia demanded. "How long have you been lying to us?" "Lying?" I moved to the bar, pouring myself a scotch. "I never lied about anything. I am an art restorer. I do love art. I just happen to run a global art investment empire as well." But why?" Mom sank onto one of my Italian leather sofas. "Why the deception? Why let us think that I was a failure? I finished for her. That I'd wasted my potential? Maybe because you never bothered to look past your own assumptions. You saw what you expected to see, the disappointing son who chose art over business." Dad was standing by the windows, staring out at the park he thought he knew so well. "All this time," he murmured. "All those acquisitions we've been reading about, the mysterious investments that have been reshaping the market. That was you?" Olivia said flatly. "Atlas Contemporary? The competition everyone's been trying to figure out? The Shadow Empire?" I smiled. "It does have a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Though I prefer to think of it as an aesthetic empire. After all, that's what you taught me, isn't it, Dad? Beauty has value." He turned to face me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something new in his eyes: respect. "The Miyazaki deal," he said slowly. "How long have you been planning that?" "About 6 months, though I've owned controlling interest in their authentication subsidiaries for over a year." I looked at Olivia. "You never wondered why they kept finding reasons to delay your offer?" My sister's face went from red to white. You played me all this time?" "Not playing, Olivia. Competing. Isn't that what you always wanted? A chance to prove who was better at business." "But it wasn't fair," she exploded. "You had inside information. Secret resources." "Inside information?" I laughed. "You mean like the kind you get from your golf club buddies? The deals you make on private yachts and exclusive resorts?" I set my glass down carefully. "I built my empire with nothing but intelligence, hard work, and a deep understanding of how beauty translates to value. Everything I learned in my little studio gave me an edge you couldn't see. Dinner is served, a voice announced discreetly. We moved to the dining room, the tension thick enough to cut with one of my sterling silver knives. Mom kept looking around as if trying to reconcile this environment with her mental image of my life. Dad seemed lost in thought, probably recalculating every business decision he'd made in the past 10 years. I suppose, Mom said finally, staring at her perfect place setting, this explains how you could afford that Tom Ford. I couldn't help but laugh. Yes, Mom. That's what you should focus on. My wardrobe budget. What happens now? Olivia asked, pushing her food around her plate. Going to buy out Mills Ventures too? Actually, I have a different proposition. I nodded to Eliza, who appeared with a folder. Your company has potential, Olivia. Good bones, as they say in real estate. What it lacks is vision and modern infrastructure. She frowned. What are you suggesting? A partnership. Mills Ventures handles the traditional investment side, while Atlas Contemporary brings the technology and global reach. Together, we could build something even bigger. You want to work with me? After everything? No, I corrected her. I want to work with the businesswoman you could be if you got over your ego and learned to see value in unexpected places. Dad set down his fork. Alexander is right, he said, surprising everyone. This is an opportunity, Olivia. A chance to be part of something bigger than ourselves. But she lied to us. Olivia protested. Made us look like fools. No, Dad shook his head. We made ourselves look like fools. We were so convinced we knew what success looked like that we couldn't see it taking a different form. Your brother, he saw something we missed. Built something we never imagined. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. All those times we pitied you, she said softly. Worried about your future. I know, I said, gentler now. But maybe it's time to stop worrying about appearances and start focusing on substance. Isn't that what real business is about? The rest of dinner was a careful dance of revelations and reconciliations. I explained how I'd built my company, how the art studio had provided the perfect cover and connections. Dad asked increasingly detailed questions about my business strategy, his initial shock giving way to genuine admiration. Even Olivia began to thaw as I outlined my vision for our potential partnership, her natural business instincts finally focused on creation rather than competition. There's one thing I don't understand, Mom said as coffee was served. Why reveal everything now? Why not just stay in the shadows? I looked at my sister. Because sometimes people need to be reminded that success doesn't always wear a power suit. That influence doesn't always announce itself with a diamond watch and a corner office. And sometimes, Olivia added quietly, people need to be reminded not to judge a book by its cover. Exactly. Later that night, after my family had left, Dad with a stack of proposals to review, Mom with a list of social events to recalibrate, and Olivia with a lot to think about, I stood at my windows watching the city lights. Eliza joined me, handing me a fresh scotch. Well, that went better than expected. Did it? I smiled. Or did it go exactly as planned? You knew they'd react this way? I knew they'd have to confront their own prejudices, their assumptions about success and worth. She checked her tablet. Stock's up 40% since the announcement. Your sister's company is up 15% just on rumors of a potential partnership. Good. Let's give it a week. Let everything settle. Then announce the merger. By then, Olivia might actually be ready to be a real partner. And your parents? I thought about Mom's tearful apology, Dad's proud smile as he finally saw me, really saw me, for the first time. They're learning. Sometimes the hardest part of success is accepting that it doesn't always look the way you expect. The next morning, I arrived at my studio at my usual time. The same employees were in their usual spots, nodding hello to their favorite boss. None of them treated me any differently, though my face was splashed across every business publication in the country. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all. In a world obsessed with image and status, I'd built something real, something that didn't need designer labels or social validation to prove its worth. I was still an art restorer. I still loved uncovering beauty beneath the surface. I just happened to be a billionaire too. Beauty, after all, comes in many forms. And sometimes the most powerful people are the ones you least expect. The end.